What's going on, guys? Welcome back to the W.A.D.E concept. I actually can't hear my audio right now, which, it happens. It's the W.A.D.E concept. We're always going to have audio issues. But we're going to check it actually right now just to see if it's working all right for us. How we doing? Yeah, we're good. Cool. All right, so what's going on, guys? How are we doing tonight? We are doing a little bit later W.A.D.E Concept podcast. I understand that is not ideal for anybody, but I wanted to get you guys some picks so at least you guys can watch the VOD back later. Just turn it up a little. Appreciate you, Devil, my man. How about that right there? Ooh, shit, that's a little clippy. What about that right there? Is that any better? Where I can do this. Bam. There we go. My man Devil's in the chat. What is up? What is up, players? Okay, so tonight is a little bit later. Like I said, it's not ideal, but your boy was crazy busy today, and it's something for you guys. You should see it tomorrow for our Fitness Friday challenge. I think you guys are really going to like that kind of stuff that we're implementing into the channel, and this is just one of those things, man. I just realized my shade's not down, but we're leaving it. We're coming off the cuff, off the rip, you know what I'm saying? But yes, we are here with our UFC 247 predictions, and we're going to jump right into it. This is going to be a short one, guys. It's going to be a little bit shorter just because, again, I'm going to edit the video for you guys. It's coming out tomorrow, and then we're going to be on live stream Saturday for 4+ hours, so I'll see you guys then. But we'll run through these picks real quick. My boy Devil in the chat. Shout out to Devil. You guys can always watch this VOD back. We're going to try to keep it under 30 minutes today. Devil says, right off the rip, Devil's getting into it. I like this energy already. He says, IDKY, but I don't believe Dominic is, quote, the one, which would mean the one to take down John Jones. And to be honest, man, it's tough. It's tough to say based off what Dom has showed us. I mean, let's be honest. John has had more title defense, or has had as many title defenses as Dominic Reyes has had professional fights. A lot of people, as these fights get closer, and as, it happens with everybody. It happens with John. It happens with Valentina. It happens with Stipe. It happens with every champion. As the fight gets closer, the challenger becomes more dangerous somehow than they were 2-3 months before that, when they weren't fighting anyone, when they were just, the fight wasn't as close. As the fight gets closer, it seems like analysts, word on the street, the fight just gets razor thin, and that's just, bred out of the competition mindset of everybody. The parody of, could a champion lose? Could a guy like John Jones, the GOAT, in my opinion, lose? That's what that comes from, in my opinion, is as the fight gets closer, you almost want to see more entertaining matchups, and so you kind of make them more entertaining in your mind, like, oh, Dominic could do it. He possesses this. We did a breakdown. You guys can go watch that, but we are going to actually make our picks today. The blonde fighter doesn't get it done either. Yeah, Caitlin Chugagan is another pick that a lot of people are saying, as this fight gets closer, that she's going to somehow knock off Valentina. And then you look, yes, she's 13-2, and we'll talk about why I don't believe that's the case at all, that she knocks off Valentina. We'll talk about it. But we're going to start. So this is how we're going to do predictions this week, guys. It's going to be 5 picks, not 7, just because this card's not super deep. And to be fair, even at the top of the card, it's it is kind of, I'm not gonna listen. Everybody has a shot, and every fight, everyone has a shot. So if Caitlin can, this would literally be, especially for MMA fans, this would be a shock. This would be a big shock. I'd love to see what the odds are for this fight. It can't be pretty. It can't be close at all. So yeah, man, if you think Caitlin is going to pull out a W, go throw 100 on Caitlin, because the odds are going to be very, very slanted toward Valentina. But I just don't see it happening. I don't see where she beats Valentina. Like, where is she better than Valentina? If you can answer that for me, please. But and I heard Caitlin talking about how she was going to maybe have a matchup with Clarissa Shields, and I'm like, let's settle down for a little bit and realize you have what some people consider if not the best, one of the best women's fighters on the planet. I argue that she's right up there with Amanda Nunes, as close as her fights have been with Amanda. I think she's right there with her. So let's slow down before we start calling out Clarissa Shields and other people. You got a freaking killer in front of you that could reign over this 125 division for however long she wants to be honest. But let's go ahead and make these picks, man. So, like I said, not a crazy big card, right? Not a crazy like stacked card. There are some great fighters on this card, though. You have even as early as the early prelims. I mean, they're going to be great fighters regardless. But Andre Ewell, he was on the Contender Series. I'm pretty sure he's on this card. Fighting Martinez. Andrea Lee's on this card. Lauren Murphy, the classic Ultimate Fighter gig on her is pretty funny. Alex Morano's on this card. Trevin Giles, another big-time, really skilled fighter. So they're good fighters. It's just that there's not a lot of huge names on this card to give it that big fight feel. You know, even toward the top of the card, I mean, our co-main event is Valentina Shevchenko, and she deserves that spot. But right after her, you have Juan Adams and Justin Tafa, two good fighters. But Juan Adams, obviously losing to Greg Hardy, kind of hurt his stock. Dan Inge, I'm a big fan of Dan Inge, and he might be my upset pick for this card. I know Mirsad is a really, really tough fighter, especially at 45. What about now? Am I back? That was weird. Sorry, guys. I don't know what that was. It was like a lag spike in my stream there, but we're back. Where are we at? Devil says, FYI, I'm driving right now. I'll try to get in the convo more in about 10 minutes. No sweat, Devil. Make sure you're safe driving, man. Sorry for everybody. That my stream just kind of lagged out for like half a second. I'm having some weird issues with my FPS and stuff, but we'll figure it out. It's one of those days, guys. Got on late. Been doing a ton of stuff, but we're keeping it rolling. So, where was I? Oh, yeah. Everybody at Dominance MMA is talking about Dan Inge and being one of those guys that could possibly make some waves at featherweight. And we know 145 is a stacked division. We understand that. But I think he might be my upset pick. So let's start off with some picks here. We got Derek Lewis and Ilir Latifi. And this is Ilir Latifi's debut at heavyweight. If you guys remember, he was making some noise at light heavyweight, had even at one point called out DC after a big win. I think I was actually at the fight he won. I can't remember who he was fighting. But he called out DC after a big win and then struggled against Volkan Ozdemir and struggled in some fights. And even this week, he's talked about how he makes such a hard weight cut. He was cutting 30-plus pounds to get to 205, which is insane for a guy of his stature. He's not a really big, tall guy. So that weight isn't distributed over like a big, like say I'm 6'3", right? If I was 6'3", 240, kind of like John, some say John is 6'5", 240, and having to cut that weight, it's a little easier than a guy that he's 5'10", and was cutting down to 205 and probably a natural 240, 245 guy. So for him, that had to have been brutal because at that point, you're not cutting water. You're not cutting, stuff that's easily going to fall off. You're cutting strictly muscle at that point. Sorry, I got a notification, guys. You're cutting muscle and vital, proteins, energy that you're going to need for that fight. That stuff is just gone because you're just a gaunt kind of skeleton at that point. So it's good to see him moving up. It obviously is going to be a little bit of a disadvantage for him, especially in the reach with some of these big heavyweights that are 6'3 plus, 6'4 plus. Obviously, it wasn't a too big of a deal for Daniel Cormier, and we know Latifi does have a really nice wrestling background. So he can get it at Derek Lewis's legs. We've seen Derek Lewis struggle with guys that are wrestlers and guys that can grapple. They've really given him some problems. So this fight is interesting. Obviously, Derek Lewis wants to get that record for KOs in the UFC. He's one fight away from doing it, or one KO, I guess, away from doing that. So I could see that happening. I could also see Latifi wrestling for 3 rounds and getting a decision victory. I could see both ways. What I do think is Derek Lewis is one of these fighters where he'll go on a run. He'll go on like a 3 or 4 or 5 fight run where he just seems like he's a world beater and can beat anybody in the world. Like he just seems like he can knock out anyone. And I think this is going to be what's happening Saturday. I think Latifi has been sparked. He's been hit and put down unconscious before. He's been stopped. And coming up to heavyweight, these guys hit so much harder. And that's not to say that his wrestling can't get the job done, because it absolutely can. And you know, I would say, I don't know, probability would probably be on his side. I would say, you know, safe money would be on Latifi wrestling for 3 rounds and getting a victory. But I don't know. The Black Beast in his hometown, he can knock you out at any point in the fight. We've seen that early in the fight. 10 seconds left. You guys have seen my reaction to UFC 229. So I think he gets it done, and I think he gets it done by knockout or TKO. We'll say maybe later in the fight, after he's starting to maybe wear down Latifi with some of the takedown attempts over and over and over. And Derek Lewis can maybe find something in that last like 2 minutes. And it doesn't take much at heavyweight, guys. We know this. It takes one shot, especially with a guy like Derek Lewis. He knocks fools dead. So we'll say a late 3rd round stoppage by knockout. And Derek Lewis gets that record for most knockouts. I think it's most knockouts at heavyweight, but I could be wrong. Josh, what's going on, Josh? Josh has Derek Lewis by KO. I agree. I think in his hometown, I do think that, obviously we'll have to see. A lot of people are saying Derek Lewis looks really good right now as far as his physique and how he's worked on a lot of his cardio. Obviously, it's coming out of his camp, but even people at Media Day, you heard Ariel talk about it. Brett Okamoto's talking about how he looks so slim. In that case, I'm a big supporter of a guy that loses a little bit of excess weight. Like, I don't think Francis Ngannou should go out and start cutting weight to try to speed up. That guy's already lightning fast, and he's just built at 265. You know, that's just how his body's made up. Derek Lewis could stand to lose a little, 10, 15 pounds and really slim down into a more athletic frame, something that he doesn't have to carry a lot of excess weight. And then into those later rounds, he can start to, not have the cardio issues or defend some of those takedowns that weren't as explosive as they were in the first round. And I think that's what Latifi's going to have to try to do, because the reach advantage that Derek is going to have is going to be, it's 6 or 5.5 inches. It's going to be significant. And like I said, at any point in the fight, he can definitely end it. That's what I think happens. I think Derek Lewis is a middle of the 3rd round to late 3rd round KO, and he walks it off in Houston. So we're going to give the Black Beast the nod in our first pick of the night. We have our next fight, Mirsad Bektik and Dan Ige. I'm a big fan of Dan Ige. I know Mirsad's a world beater as well. Pretty even fight, to be honest with you. Pretty even fight. It's a toss-up. And I don't want to say this is an upset because Bektik is ranked number 14, but I consider Dan Ige to be one of the top 15 fighters at featherweight. But that's what I'm going with. Dan Ige, and I think it's going to be a gritty fight. I think both guys are going to come out blazing. At 45, we're going to see both guys come out with incredible gas tanks. 3 rounds, they're going to be start to finish letting it go. I think there's going to be a lot of grappling exchanges too, a lot of scrambles, I should say, not necessarily grappling exchanges. I think both guys are going to come in hot, throwing big-time shots. And I think out of that, someone is going to, change levels, attempt that takedown. Someone's going to scramble. I think that could go both ways. And I do think it's going to be a gritty, down, rough fight, and Dan Ige gets the decision. I think it's one of those fights where you go into it and you know that it's going to be entertaining. You just don't really know what's going to happen. I think both guys can mix it up on the feet. Both guys can grapple. And I think Dan Ige just, I don't want to say slightly gets the decision. I think he gets a unanimous. I think he probably wins. He comes out a little more polished in the first. I think Bektik comes out like a fireball. But I think Dan Ige comes out a little more polished. Doesn't take as much damage, but also doesn't give as much, so maybe loses the first and wins the next 2. That's what I think. Dan Ige by unanimous decision. I think that could be a sleeper. I mean, Dan Ige his nickname is 50K. The guy wins bonuses all the time. That could be sleeper for fight of the night right there. So keep an eye on that one as our second fight of the main card. Keep an eye on that one. So we have Derek Lewis by KO, Dan Ige by unanimous decision. Then we move on to Juan Adams and Justin Tafa. Justin Tafa got sparked in his last fight, but and it was a crazy knockout. I can't remember the guy's name off the top of my head, but I know he's a big time puncher at heavyweight. Again, there's a lot of big time punchers. Juan Adams got beat by Derek Hardy, another big time prospect coming into that. A lot of people thought Juan Adams was the guy to take Greg Hardy and kind of stop that hype train, but he wasn't able to do it. That kind of stopped his momentum because there was some rumblings of him being some serious at heavyweight, and he still could be. But you're you're looking at it, and Juan Adams does possess a reach advantage, does like to strike. Justin Tafa will stand in there and literally throw. I mean, caution to the wind, throw. You see a lot of the similarities that you see out of guys like Mark Hunt. You see the same out of Taito Ivasa. The just complete caution to the wind, throwing big shots, and especially at heavyweight, those things land and someone's going down. And most of the time, if it's not the New Zealanders that are landing with big-time shots, they're going down because they'll stand in there and trade. They won't necessarily, use the space or use any kind of grappling. Or they're just going to stand there and throw with you. And they can crack for sure. Mark Hunt can crack. Taito Ivasa can crack. And Tafa can do the same, but we watched him get sparked coming forward in his last fight. Got hooked. I think it was a left hook that put him out, and it was ugly. I mean, he flatlined. So I think that is part of the reason why I'm going Juan Adams here. Haven't seen a ton of Juan, so I'm kind of picking blind here, but I have seen Justin Tafa, the kind of reckless ability that, and a lot of, again, a pretty big hype train behind Justin Tafa in his last fight before he just got completely obliterated. But I think if they're out of the two guys fighting, if there was someone to step back out of the fray and recollect themselves and then try to assert some sort of game plan other than stand and throw haymakers, it'd be Juan Adams. Whether that's wrestling, whether that's just disengaging or getting into the pocket to where he's more comfortable outside of range or inside in a clinch kind of grappling range, I do think that would be Juan Adams, and I think he gets a victory. You never want to see – I don't want to say you never. You don't like to see heavyweights go to decision because of the abilities they possess, unless they are just phenomenal grapplers or phenomenal jiu-jitsu artists, or it's just, a great back and forth. But sometimes you see those decisions because a lot of heavyweights tire themselves out late into that second and early third, and they're kind of just grappling and holding against the cage and not really doing a lot. Or just, you get trigger shy, and it's understandable at 260, one shot ends the fight. But I think Juan Adams wins, and I think he does do it in a decision, unfortunately. But listen, you come with a game plan. I think Tafa's going to come to rip people's heads off. The game plan should be, shoot a double, put him down, or get out of range and blast the left hook, check left hook as he just runs in, chin up. I don't think Juan Adams is going to do that. I think it's going to be a decision. So as you can see, our main card, we haven't named one fighter that is in title contention remotely at all. So, like I said, not the most stacked card that we have here, but we do have big names. Like Derek Lewis did fight for a world title, although albeit kind of an odd situation. He fought for a world title. And, Alir Latifi was kind of making his way up at 205. Dan Inge could possibly challenge, so could Bektik at some point. So these are good, really, really, elite fighters. It's just that this card just didn't shake out to be one of those cards that had just banger after banger after banger. They just couldn't get it done. But we do have two really good fights in our co-main event and our main event. And I was talking about this with Devil a second ago, and listen, you have Caitlin Chugagan and Valentina Shevchenko. I said this earlier, I don't understand it. As fights get closer, as a fight is booked, you heard Caitlin Chugagan and Valentina Shevchenko. How many people went, well, hey, watch out for Caitlin Chugagan. I'm sure there are some people that did it. Watch out for Caitlin Chugagan. She could sneak up and get a victory, and she could. She absolutely could. I could just be talking out of my ass. Caitlin Chugagan comes out, puts that left hand on Valentina and puts her away. That could definitely happen. But you know what's more likely to happen is that Valentina runs through this girl like a hot knife through butter. And that's no disrespect to Caitlin Chugagan. I understand that she's got a really big fan base, really confident fighter, obviously. 13-2, that's nothing to be ashamed of at all. Let's look at that 13-2, though. Let's just look at it. Because, listen, all Valentina can do is fight the people they give her, right? That's all she can do. And listen, Caitlin is not a scrub by any stretch of the imagination. This is a legit contender. But when you go down that list and you look at the people she's beat, there are some decent names. You have Sijera Eubanks. You have Lauren Murphy's on that list. Joanne Calderon's on that list. So they're decent names. No, Devil, I'm getting to the point. I 100% agree with you. Her 2 losses, Jessica Ai, split decision. Okay, maybe, could go either way. Liz Carmouche, split decision. Okay. Valentina Shevchenko kicked Jessica Ai's face off. She kicked her face back to Cleveland. That happened, and it was in devastating fashion. She left Jessica Ai's eyes crossed. Like, Valentina's just a different level of fighter. Striking, grappling, she does not get any sort of anywhere near the amount of credit she deserves for her grappling ability. Valentina can put girls that are really good grapplers on their back really quickly. She outpoint struck one of the better point fighters or one of the better strikers in UFC history in Joanna Jędrzejczyk. Completely dominated Joanna Jędrzejczyk. Granted, Joanna's a little smaller of a 125er, but it doesn't change the fact that Joanna's one of the best women's strikers to ever live, and Valentina said, real cool, watch this. And then when she was tired of striking with Joanna, put her on her back. And Joanna's known for years about her takedown defense, not being able to be taken down. Put her on her back pretty easily. Valentina is one of the most all-around just great fighters that we see today. Doesn't get near the respect she deserves. I think, again, she's right up there with Amanda Nunes as far as talent, ability, and just will to win. I think if they redo that fight, if they run that fight back again, I don't know if they ever will. If they ran that fight back again, we'd see another very, very close fight where a lot of people would scratch their heads and go, Valentina, in my eyes, could have won that fight or maybe did win that fight. So to the blatant, I don't want to say disrespect, but the conjuring of Caitlin Chugagan being able just to land a left hand and win this fight, it mirrors the main event, to be honest. It mirrors the same type of analysis that we see in the main event. Well, Dom's fast. He's got that left hand, and John gets hit. I mean, how many times can you say that without realizing the greatness that the other person possesses? You know what I'm saying? So I don't think this is going to be a close fight. I don't think that Valentina finishes her. At least, maybe she does, actually. Let's say this. I think Valentina puts on a clinic for 3 rounds, and in that 4th round, maybe gets a submission or wins the fight by ground strikes, TKO ground strikes. I think Caitlin does what she can. Taller girl, but not much of a reach advantage there. I think she probably comes forward, gets very aggressive early, and Valentina probably shows off a lot of that grappling early, puts her on her back, throws some vicious elbows from the top, ground and pound. As the fight goes on, I think Valentina starts to overwhelm and really just show, like I said, the showcase of ability is what we're going to see, in my opinion. We're going to see Valentina showcase her stand-up, her grappling, her ground strikes, her submissions, all of it, I think is what's going to happen. Yeah, Valentina isn't necessarily one of those girls. Now, she obliterated Jessica Ai, but she's not necessarily a girl that comes out and just sparks people right away. She does get into her groove and does, again, love to showcase those abilities over a good amount of time. She has a lot of great decision wins in which she didn't necessarily ever look like she was looking to finish the fight, but looked like she was putting on a display of martial arts. And every time Valentina fights, it's such a cool thing to watch her just dominate, especially at 25. She's found her weight class, so I'm excited for that fight. I know that it might not be overly competitive, but I am excited for that fight. So we're going Valentina by 4th round stoppage. I think it's like an early 4th. She takes Caitlin down and submits her. Okay. Now, our main event. What can we say about this, guys? What can we say? Okay. I did my breakdown. On this fight. And there are some things that I do see in this matchup that does make it interesting. Obviously, Dominic Reyes is 12-0. That right there is a number that not a lot of guys get to at light heavyweight or even in MMA. But let's not overhype the 12-0. Let's look at it with no bias, with no, well, John could lose. Let's look at it strictly on what we have, what both fighters bring to the table. And Dominic Reyes does bring a nasty left hand, and an ability to throw it from a lot of different angles. He can throw it going forward. He almost throws it, in my opinion, better going backward. We saw that with Jared Cannonier. We saw him catch Ozdemir with it a couple of times. I think he throws it sometimes better moving backward. But to do that, you have to have an overly aggressive fighter moving forward. John has never been an overly aggressive, run-at-you, super pressure fighter. Never has John been that. So that could be a problem already out of the gate. What I do like that Dominic Reyes does, kicks the legs. I love these leg kicks. Love them, especially out of southpaw. If John's standing, you saw, I think it was Thiago Santos do it. That lead leg when John's standing southpaw, that can give some damage. John does have those tiny little legs, so that can do some damage early, and especially if John is going to look to use those oblique kicks and those teep kicks. If Dom can eat up that front leg, that's going to slow John down. It's going to make him rethink throwing those at all. So there's that for Dominic Reyes. He does have good hips. The guy, Chris Weidman, when he gets a double leg on you and has you against the fence, he usually completes that takedown and you don't get up. While he did complete the takedown on Dom, he shoots back to his feet immediately. And he did it against Ozdemir, which I think he was caught off guard a little bit by Ozdemir's takedowns. Who expects Ozdemir to take somebody down 3 times in a fight? But again, as soon as he got taken down, straight to his feet. Guy's a really, really good scrambler. Again, we talked about this in the breakdown. I think he relies on his ability to scramble and his athletic ability a little too much. He thinks he is the best athlete that steps in the octagon every time he steps in. And I understand that John kind of gets roasted online for not being a good athlete. He can't dunk and he's 6'5", all that. In that cage, there's not a lot of guys that are as creative, explosive, athletic, to be honest with you, as John Jones. So I think Dom is in for a rude awakening when he understands that John isn't somebody that he can just out-athletic. You know what I mean? He's not just going to be able to out-athletic John Jones. Explosion, all that stuff that Dom possesses, John does possess the same stuff. While he might not show it with the hands as much, he does possess it in his double leg takedowns or that fake takedown spinning elbow on the fence. I love that from him. And even just little stuff like inside trips as quick as he gets them, or when he clasps the hands and he takes you for a ride. All that stuff that John does, it is explosive. So I think Dom is in for a rude awakening when he walks into a cage and realizes that John's just as athletic in that space. He might not be able to catch a football like Dom. He might not be able to run 40 yards as fast as Dom, but it doesn't really matter, does it? Because they're not doing those things. They're fighting each other. So I do, like I said, I do like some things that Dom does. I think if there is a way to wear down John or to catch John off guard, it is with the leg kicks. I think Dom, at least early, will be able to use his hips and stop a couple of takedowns. And after those takedowns, Dom loves to switch out or flip the hips out and drop the left hand. Loves that. So look for that. He loves to drop it quick out of clinches, quick out of the break. But now let's talk about what in actuality is probably going to happen. Daniel, what's up, man? I've been good. How you been, big man? Let's talk about what's actually going to happen here. So what in my opinion, what's going to happen is John is going to make Dominic feel like he's lost in there. I think early in the fight, John makes Dom realize that he can't just stand in front of John. He can't attack John because the oblique kicks are coming. He can't move backward against John because John's not going to follow him. John's going to own the center of the cage, keep Dominic where Dominic tends to put himself on the back of the cage, and he's going to eat up that front leg with the oblique kicks. If Dom rushes in with the left, that's a double leg waiting to happen. I think John is going to, much like the co-main event, I think he's going to put on a display here. What does the $95 annual pass give you? What is that for what? I'm not sure what that means, Daniel. Or you mean for ESPN Plus? Not sure what that means. But yeah, I think that Dom rushes in, if he does decide to rush in on John and gets frustrated and can't get his range and tries to just land a left hand, that's a double leg. I think in the clinch, Dom usually has decent success escaping and dropping a left hand. I don't think John lets him escape as easily. Those knees are going to dig into Dom's stomach. I think John stops him, to be quite honest with you. The UFC annual pass. Oh, I'm not sure, brother. I am not sure. I think I have the UFC Fight Pass monthly. I don't do the annual pass. I'm not sure what that gets you. But I think John stops Dom. I think Dom realizes very quick that he's going to have to go into deep water. The first time we've seen him do that in the UFC, 5 rounds with John Jones is one of the worst things you can imagine. Because as the fight goes on, John starts to slowly and methodically implement his game or implement whatever he reads in those first couple of rounds. I could see John losing the first round because of Dom's aggression, his ability to kick the lead leg. But as he's doing that, it's almost like the Floyd Money Mayweather comparison. He's kind of downloading information and figuring out what it is that you're leaving open. I mean, you saw it in the Daniel Cormier fights, especially the second one. The leg kicks, the oblique kicks. Daniel kept coming forward, kept pushing John, kept pushing him. And it was a great fight to watch because Daniel was having success, especially in the dirty boxing and close and tight. But as John continually, at a southpaw, kicked those legs, went to the body, Daniel slowly started to then cover. Slowly those hands dropped, and all of a sudden, John goes high with the kick when it looked like Daniel was having a ton of success, and we all know what happened after that. Because I want to watch the fights but can't keep paying every 2 weeks. Yeah, that's the way it is. They won't get you. So if you're asking if they'll get you the pay-per-views, Daniel, they will not. They will not get you the pay-per-views. Anything with the UFC for an annual pass, they won't get you the pay-per-views. You have to pay. That's why it's called pay-per-view. You have to pay every single time. They have that card as a pay-per-view. You have to pay it every time. It's just the way it is, man. I know it kind of sucks, but I can't. You can't get around that one, unfortunately. Trust me, I would do the same thing if I could. Daniel says, John knocked me out. I don't know if you're serious there, but yeah, dude, unfortunately, that's just the way it goes. So, yeah, I think John probably takes Dom into deep water. Dom starts to get frustrated, comes forward on John, double leg takedown, single leg, whatever, high crotch. Puts Dom on the ground. Later in the rounds, I don't think he's explosive as he was in rounds 1, 2, and 3. Don't think he gets up as quickly, and if he does, John puts him right back down, and I think John submits him. I think John gets a rear naked choke, maybe gets to one of Dom's arms, and finishes the fight. John's been, especially recently, he's been working a lot. If you've watched his Instagrams, you've taken a look at some of the behind the scenes, working a lot on his grappling, especially after that Thiago Santos scare. I think a lot of people got in his head. Oh, I got you. I think a lot of people got in John's head about how he needs to use that grappling and fair play. He probably should have. That's the closest I've ever seen John, maybe the first Gus fight, but that's the closest I've seen John to taking a loss. And so maybe he comes out and uses more of that grappling in this fight. That's what I think happens. But I think that's all 5 fights. So we have Derek Lewis versus Alir Latifi. We have Derek Lewis by KO, 3rd round. We have Dan Inge getting the decision on Bektik. Nice, Daniel. That'd be sick, man. We have Juan Adams with a decision win over Justin Tafa. We have Valentina with a submission win over Caitlin. And John Jones with a submission win, continuing his legacy as the GOAT. I don't want to hear any other arguments. He is the GOAT. I know I'm going to get Tommy's going to be texting me in a second talking about, no, he's not. But he is. And that's our 5, guys. I will make sure Saturday we have those on the, what's it called right here, on the little chalkboard. We'll do some wagers. You guys got to let me know by Saturday what you want, though. We haven't discussed any kind of punishments or wagers or anything like that. So you guys got to let me know. What do you want me to do if I lose? We got 5 fights. I got to pick 3 right. Let me know either in the comments, if you guys are watching this back in VOD form, or Saturday in the live chat. You guys let me know what you want to see. We'll do it as long as it doesn't harm me, my bodily anything. Can't harm me, and it can't get me kicked off YouTube. Anything else, we'll get it done. All right. A little short one tonight, guys. A little late night Wade podcast stream. Kyle, that's a good point. I like that a lot. I rewatched Santos again and shave eyebrows. Jesus, you guys are really about that shave eyebrow stuff. I like Kyle's point. Kyle just hopped in chat and he says, I rewatched the Santos fight. It looked like commentary skewed my opinion, and John won that fight. I like that because I went back and watched it as well, and just to get some footage for my my predictions, and I'm watching it, and while Thiago Santos had some obviously had success, especially with the leg kick early and then running forward, kind of a couple shots on John. John loses that mouthpiece all the time, by the way. You watch it back, and while it was close, it was a close fight in my opinion. I do think, and I said this, I think, since John won the first time, and I actually went back and watched it. I didn't watch it live, that John won that fight. I don't disagree that John won the fight at all. I think John won it convincingly enough to not have any questions asked about it. Like, it wasn't a controversial decision in my opinion. Even back watching it again, it makes it almost less controversial. So I'm with Kyle. I like that analysis a lot. But yeah, Gus 1 was way closer. I've been one of the people that said the Gus 1 fight, I thought Gus pulled out. I thought Gus won that fight, but life goes on. But I don't think that Thiago Santos won that fight with John Jones. I do not. I think that it was close. Maybe especially early in the fight, it was close. But I think John pulled away, as John tends to do in fights. So, yeah, I'm with you, Kyle. I like that analysis. It wasn't something I necessarily even thought about, and I thought about it when I was making my video on my predictions video. I thought about it, and I was like, man, this fight is not as close as it sounded like when everybody told me how well that Thiago Santos did, because I didn't get to watch it live. And then I watched it back, and I was like, man, that's not that close. And then I watched the fight again, and I was like, this fight really wasn't that like, it wasn't a controversial decision at all. John won the fight. It was a close first, maybe second round, but John, that fight was not close leading into the fourth and fifth. Thiago Silva, yeah. Bare knuckle boxing, yeah, I did see that. Yeah, it's sad, man. It's so sad when you see it. Thiago's a coach, too, at American Top Team, I'm thinking. Somewhere in Florida. He's a coach now, too. And he's going out and doing this bare knuckle boxing stuff. Again, to each their own, man. If you want to go and do bare knuckle boxing and you have your wits about you. Oh, Tommy, what's up, brother? I didn't even see that. What's going on, big dog? We're talking about how John Jones is the greatest of all time. No questions asked. No big deal. But yeah, listen, man, if you want to go to bare knuckle boxing and yeah, they're paying you good enough or they're paying you something that makes it worth it, okay. But you hate to see these guys that are former greats like Thiago Silva. I think that Vanderlei was doing it too for a little bit, and you hate to see it, man. But hey, I think Hector Lombard might have done it too. To each their own. But it's it is what it is. Kyle said I had the Gus 1 fight a draw. Fourth round was a 10-8 for Jones. Yeah, John did, man. In those championship rounds, especially the fourth, John came out and had a different intensity. When you go back and look at it, yeah, Thiago Silva was nasty, man. It was nasty, and still to this day, as a coach down there, is really implementing a lot of good stuff at American. I think he's at American Top Team. I could be wrong, and he could be with Henry Hooft, but I don't remember where he's at. But the fighters that he has coached, all they have to say is good things about the things that he teaches. And it's not just showing them physically. It's just the wisdom he provides as far as how to handle certain situations in fights and what to look for out of certain individuals. The guy is an encyclopedia. Bruce Lee versus Silva, yeah. So Thiago Silva would run right through Bruce Lee. But yeah, I agree with Kyle. 10-8 round in the fourth for John in the first fight. That was an insane fight, man. I watched that one back as I was looking for footage on John. And the stuff that Gus did in that fight, man, I wish, as John's evolved, it seemed like, and it's because John Jones is John Jones, Gus has just had a tough time staying on the horse. He'll have a great victory, loses, comes back, has another great victory, loses. It just can't. Once you run into a guy like John Jones, maybe psychologically, it's just like, if that's what I got to be, if that's who I got to beat, and the guy barely trained and still, pulled out a victory, man, what do I do? And now Gus is talking about coming back, and John's going to be there. He's talking about in an interview today. Yeah, he'll go do the heavyweight thing, but 205 is his home. He's going to be there. Kyle says he's got Latifi in the upset. I don't listen. I don't disagree that the safe pick is Ilir Latifi in that fight. Great wrestling. Heavy hands. I don't think the hands are going to be nearly as much of a benefactor in this fight as they would be maybe at 205, because Derek Lewis is a monster, and hitting a 260, 6'3", 260 giant is not like hitting some of these guys at 205. I do think his wrestling could be a big factor. Derek Lewis is obviously susceptible. I mean, poor Derek Lewis, Daniel Cormier ankle picked him and just raised his ankle into the air like a wine glass. So, yeah, I think that it's a good pick. It's a safe pick. I maybe it's more of a biased pick for me too, to be honest, because Derek Lewis is fighting in his hometown, one knockout away from the record. A lot of people, again, this has nothing to do with the fight. Whoa, he looks slim. If he comes in tomorrow and weighs in, or did he weigh in? Was weigh-ins today? No, tomorrow. If he comes in tomorrow and weighs in at like 245 or 250, That would raise some eyebrows. That would raise some eyebrows for me, but just to be like, wow, okay, Derek Lewis is taking this more seriously as these fights go forward, and he is working on a little bit more of that cardio, trimming some of that unwanted or unneeded weight. And hopefully, that can contribute to a little bit more takedown defense or any kind of cardio issues that he's had in the past. I mean, for God's sake, sometimes Derek Lewis is in there with his hands on his hips. By the way, did you guys see what he said today at the press conference or at media days? He said, they go, Derek, how do you think you'll win? He's like, it's going to be a tough fight. I'll probably win by controversial decision. That dude is so funny, man. He's like, controversial decision. That's what I think. That's what I'm going for. Kyle says, I think Latifi will be too fast. Good point. Alira shooting in on a double on Derek is as fast as he is. It's a good point. Especially with Alira cutting 35 plus pounds to get to light heavyweight, and now he doesn't have to do that. Walk in probably at 245 or so, still speedy, still explosive. It's a good point. Yeah. That's what I said, Kyle. I said, listen, they call Dan Inge 50K for a reason, man. The guy is a walking fight of the night machine. And Bektic comes out blazing hell fury every time I've seen him fight. That's got fight of the night written all over it. That's what I said. So I'm excited for that fight. I do have Dan Inge, though. I think Dan Inge pulls that fight out in a close decision. Yeah, Anderson Silva destroys Bruce Lee. Destroys him. People overestimate the martial arts ability of Bruce Lee. I understand the teachings and the revolutionizing of mixing the martial arts like Bruce Lee did, but you have to understand that today, these athletes, the evolution of the game, there's not going to be a lot of guys that could stand the test of time and say, back then, so-and-so was this. Yeah, and by the way, Anderson Silva's 50 plus pounds bigger than the guy. But not even, just technique-wise, Anderson Silva's one of the greatest strikers to ever live. Ever. And just twitchy and great timing and just that sensibility in reading his opponent. There's no comparison. Anderson Silva stomps that guy. And that could be said for pretty much every 135er on the roster right now. I don't know. I don't know why that's a discussion or a debate. Bruce Lee was, like Josh said, a movie star. He was great for the evolution of martial arts and mixed martial arts, kind of the first iteration of a mixed martial art. But you have to look at a guy like that and understand his teachings. You understand the wisdom he brought forth in the game. But to put him up, like pit him in a fight, no. Nonsense. Daniel says, I just want to see Anthony Pettis. Yeah, man, Anthony Pettis is always fun to watch. Always a fun fighter to watch, man. But yeah, Waffles was crack-a-lacking, baby. Devil says, yo, what about McGregor and Habib, Saudi Arabia, 100 million? It's interesting. It's interesting that Saudi Arabia is paying so much, this oil money, dude, and blood money, actually. We'll talk about that. It's crazy that they're paying so much for a rematch that wasn't necessarily overly competitive. But in my opinion, I think it deserves to be made again at some point. It's one of those fights that if you don't do it again, 40 years down the line, we're going to regret that we didn't see it again. It's one of those fights that is world defining. At that moment, everyone will tune in for that fight. You have to do it again at some point if all roads lead to it. Obviously, if it doesn't make sense with Conor maybe loses or Habib goes on and wins and Conor takes another couple losses at whatever, it doesn't make sense then. I understand that. But if Conor continues to win, Habib continues to win, honestly, if Habib loses, that fight still makes sense. But I know Habib said he didn't want to do it. He said he wasn't having it. He didn't need that money. And he called Cowboy and Conor a circus. I saw all that. I still do think that the UFC does come in with some sort of offer that he doesn't refuse. I think at some point, and I don't know what they're going to do with Conor. I watched an interview with Dana today, and that's a good idea, Josh. So Josh said you should do a dream matchup stream. You could talk about who wins these fights and why, fights that never happened or won't happen yet. I love that. We actually are going to do that. Love that idea, Josh. Love that. Devil Monkey said inbreeding dictator money. Dude, the stuff that goes on over there, and that's you know what I'm saying? I'm not going to get into all that, but it's just what is happening. And more so, what are people thinking when they just, I'll take that money. I don't care where it came from. Exactly. Well, listen, Kyle, I'm not sleeping on Tony Ferguson. That's why I say if Khabib loses, the fight still makes sense to make him and Conor. You don't need the belt for that fight to be a big fight. The vitriol and the hatred and the blood that's there, that fight's going to be big. But the disrespect that people talked about Donald Cerrone being disrespected, and I agreed. A lot of people in the mainstream kind of sports media disrespected Donald Cerrone way too much. But Tony Ferguson is the damn boogeyman. And watch what happens. I'm going to say this now because we see it with contenders that aren't necessarily up to snuff. Watch what happens as that fight gets closer. I guarantee you more people pick Tony Ferguson to beat Khabib than the other way around. That fight, as it gets closer, people are going to start raising the eyebrows and saying, Tony can definitely do this. And he can. And he absolutely can. It's going to be interesting to break that one down. Because this is the thing. Tony Ferguson isn't a conventional fighter. He isn't looking to... He's going out there looking to finish fights. And he doesn't necessarily... He kind of throws caution to the wind in his striking. He believes in himself so much, and he has such a great great cardio ability, and somehow resurrect from the dead sometimes when he gets flash knockdowns. But he has this great belief in his striking, his grappling, that anywhere the fight goes, he is dangerous. He is. He's very dangerous. And when that fight comes, we will break it down in more detail. There are reasons for me. I do think that while Tony does present problems, and a lot of people are making the point about the cut too, like they're in New York for that fight. It's in Brooklyn. The same doctor that stopped the Nate Diaz Jorge Masvidal fight will be presiding over that fight. If Tony lands one of those vicious elbows and a big gash on Khabib's head, we could be seeing another disappointing ending to a massive fight, because the New York Commission is just the shits right now. They don't know what's going on. And it's because they haven't had a ton of fights there yet. They don't know what to expect. I really wish that fight was in Vegas. It's not. So that's a factor in the fight. There are reasons that I'm at the moment leaning Khabib. But we'll talk about that fight when it comes. It's going to be one of those that we'll do like a damn 2-hour podcast on. That fight is just so much to talk about. Kyle says Tony becomes a massive superstar with a victory. 100%. And rightfully so, man. Rightfully so for Tony. Listen, he has had so many obstacles. I don't know if there's anybody that's ever in the UFC that's had as many obstacles to get to that strap than just to lose it on the weirdest thing you could possibly imagine happening to a guy. Tripping over a wire and tearing every ligament in his knee, and then having to make his way back through Murderer's Row once again and get to that title again. Tony's insane, and he deserves every type of accolade that comes his way. Like, that guy is one of the hardest working, forward-driven, just off the grid, off the rails in some ways, but in some ways the perfect amount of just crazy. He's the perfect amount of crazy for a guy like Khabib. Or if he breaks his nose like he did Donald. Yeah, if Tony's one of those guys, man, when he fights dudes, and Kyle's making a good point there, when he fights guys, look at the pictures of the guys before they fight Tony and immediately after. It looks like they've been in a car accident. This guy butchers people. Like, I know El Kakui is his nickname, the Butcher. El Butcher should definitely be his nickname. I mean, he just messes people's faces up. You know how Khabib was saying, I want to change Conor's face? That's what Tony does to guys. He changes their face. So that fight's interesting for sure. But yeah, I agree with Devil. I agree with Kyle. If Tony does beat Khabib, the fight with Conor still works. Getting back to that original point, I don't know what the appeal is for the Saudis to have it in Saudi Arabia. I know maybe I don't know. I know the appeal of Khabib, but I don't get what the appeal is for the $100 million and who that even goes to. If that's like a 50-50 split, I don't know. Ali's saying, let's do it. Ali, Khabib's manager, saying, let's get it. Dana's obviously, and that's another thing. Dana's, I think, trying to hold Conor off and trying to kind of put him on the sideline to wait for that fight, especially because it's in April and they don't think that the Tony fight's going to get made, or at least Conor doesn't. Dana wants to slide Conor in there should that not happen. I really think Conor could still do with another fight. I think that to keep him fresh, Conor's got to be working. He's got to be active. And whether that's Justin Gaethje or Nate Diaz trilogy, I want to see another Conor fight before he fights Khabib. I do. I want to see it. And I know it's dangerous. It's risking one of the biggest fights in history, but it's also, if you don't do it, Conor's on the shelf for another 8 to 9 months. Like, you can't have him on the shelf like that. I know that it's risky. I know that it could derail the biggest fight ever, the rematch of the biggest fight ever, but you have to figure out a way to keep him fresh. Daniel says, who you got, BJ Penn or Anthony Pettis? If you're talking about now, Anthony Pettis runs through BJ Penn like that dude he fought on the street that KO'd him. Like, BJ Penn is not what he used to be. And Kyle makes a good point. We're talking 2010, 2011. It's a good fight. BJ Penn, one of the greatest BJJ practitioners at that time, one of the fastest black belts in history, could definitely do some things to Anthony Pettis at that time. Right now, I mean, it's laughable. Can my boy Devil says, can my boy Diamond Poirier ever or get another fight while we're at it? Yeah, seriously, what is going on with Dustin, man? I think he's angling for this Nate Diaz fight. I think Diaz wants Conor. I think that Nate is just kind of getting, or excuse me, that Dustin's just kind of getting left on the back burner with that. But I've heard him say a couple names. I would like to see him and Gaethje go at it again. I think if Gaethje's saying he's not fighting unless it's for a title or unless it's Conor McGregor, and I get Gaethje there, he doesn't really have to fight. Like, what else does he have to do? But I would like to see that fight. That'd be a fun fight. Dustin's talking about going up to 70. I can see some interesting matchups up there with him. Maybe the Colby Covington fight. I don't know how that would work out or if they would even do it, but that'd be interesting to see. But yeah, I would like to see Poirier and Gaethje. I would really like to see that. And I don't think necessarily it goes any differently, to be honest with you. I think Gaethje's very hittable. And people that watch Gaethje run through Donald and run through Edson Barboza, those are two really great fighters, really good fighters. But elite level striking does damage to Justin Gaethje. He gets peppered. When he strikes with a guy that knows how to hit you and not get hit, he gets peppered. Gaethje's punch drunk. He's had a resurgence though, man. He's I don't know if it's necessarily a difference in his ability or just a difference in his mindset, but he's been able to come out, I don't want to say more guarded, but definitely more measured in his fights. While he is very aggressive and he I don't think that'll change, and he wants violence and all that, he is more measured in his last couple of fights. Granted, I saw a stat somewhere that was like every fighter he's faced in his last, I don't know, 3 that he's knocked, super quick knockouts. They're 1-12 in their last couple fights or something like that combined. So it's not like he's had a streak where he's just out here beating world beaters and champions, but he has beaten guys that have been top 5, top 10 contenders. So you have to give him his respect there. But I agree. He is, when Gaethje gets really clipped, it doesn't look good. And I think he even knows that. He's self-aware enough to be like, look, I'm not fighting for too much longer. Pettis is still great. People just don't know how good Diego Ferreira is. Yeah, that's a great point from Kyle. Diego is a really, really good fighter. Especially you're talking about a guy whose jiu-jitsu is on the level of Ferreira's, is a really, really good fighter. And Anthony Pettis has great jiu-jitsu. And to be fair, Anthony was doing really well in that fight. Really crisp striking. And we'll always see that at Anthony Pettis. We'll always see him be able to strike with pretty much anybody he steps in there with. Just a really great Taekwondo and blended into now Muay Thai base that he has. And his creativity, his quickness, all that will still be there. He just ran into a guy that really understood not only striking, and his Muay Thai is great as well. His leg kicks are ferocious. But he understood where Anthony was a little weaker. And sometimes Anthony does take some risks, especially to pull off a highlight play or to pull off a submission that doesn't necessarily put him in a great position. But if he gets it, it's really cool to see. And Diego understood it and took advantage of it. So, yeah, man, I think that's it for us today, guys. We banged out an hour. I was only wanting to go 30 minutes, but you guys are just some animals and came in here with the heat today, and I appreciate it. My man Kyle back in here doing work. I appreciate that. One more thing. Kyle says, Pettis should stay at 70, let his body adjust to the division. Floating around's not good. Yeah, I don't like him bouncing. It'd be fine if he was going like 155, 170. That's fine. I don't want to see him like fluctuating like that. Like stay at 1 for a couple. Okay, you have a bad run, drop back down, but I don't want to see 55, 70, 55, 70. No, I'm with you. That's not great. Daniel says Nate versus Nick. That'll never happen. If you mean the Diaz brothers fighting each other, that would never happen. Nate versus Poirier. I want to see my boy get that payday. Yeah, I would love to see that. I'd love to see that. Nate versus Nick. I mean, Yeah, it'd be fun to watch. I don't know how it would go, to be honest with you. I'd have to see Nick even train. Obviously, Nick, for the longest part of their lives, has been known as the better fighter. I'd have to see what he looks like now. The guy hasn't stepped foot in a ring or an octagon or any kind of combative space in 5 years. So I'd have to actually see what he looked like. That'd be fun, but that'll never happen. Those are the only two brothers I would be like, eh. Like the Klitschko brothers said they never would, but in the back of your mind, you're like, will they actually? Those guys will not ever, because they probably already done it about 100 times in their backyard. You know what I mean? There's no reason for them to do that at that point. But yeah, you say you look good at 70. You only had one loss in Nate, if I'm not mistaken. Yeah. He's only had 2 fights at 70. He lost to Nate, obviously, but looked really good against Wonder Boy. I mean, he didn't look bad against Nate. It's just Nate was, a bad matchup for him. A guy that just doesn't necessarily get, put out that much. He doesn't necessarily get, like Anthony Pettis. If he doesn't knock you out or submit you, he's really not going to beat you. That's been kind of the story for him his whole career. He's had some decision victories, but for the most part, Pettis likes to knock you out or submit you. Chiesa was that might have been at 70. Chiesa fight might have been at 70. That's a good call. Michael Chiesa at 70. Hey now, watch out at Chiesa at 70. If you want to talk about a contender, that guy is so big. Can you believe that he was at making 155 at some point? That dude is got to be 200 plus pounds. He is huge for 70. That's insane that he was making 155. I like that he's had a resurgence in his career too. His striking is still not quite there yet, but man, his power and his grappling, when he gets the hands around you, dude, Jesus. Explosive. Yeah, that's the crazy part, is he subbed him. That's the crazy part. And Chiesa is while people I think sometimes overestimate black belt ability in MMA and the UFC, Chiesa is one of those guys that is top level, and Pettis subbed him. But yeah, man, Pettis is really good. He just sometimes runs into matchups where guys are not going to play that game and not just going to go out and get reckless with him and allow him to do some of his unorthodox, unconventional stuff. And in those situations, especially like in the Fajeda fight, I think we even called that. He was going to spin like he does when he gets his back taken. He loves to, or when he gets in some sort of situation where either his back's taken or he's mounted, he will spin. He loves to spin and try to end up in full guard. And Fajeda just wasn't having it. Trapped the leg. Beautiful submission. But all right, guys, man, that was fun. That was super fun. You guys are fucking awesome. Excuse my language. But you guys are awesome. I will see you guys Saturday. I have a new series coming out tomorrow that actually I'm going to have to go edit after I do something else right now. So I'm going to have a long night tonight. I will holler at you guys in video form tomorrow, but I'll holler at you guys in live stream form Saturday. Guys, get some punishments. Get your brain working. Get some punishments for your boy. We're going to be doing our apple juice drinking game as always. We are going to be we're going to have a good night. It's going to be a fun night. It always is with you guys. So thank you so much for watching. This is the W.A.D.E concept where we are debating and tomorrow doing everything. Khabib versus Lesnar. Who you got your money on? Brock Lesnar. Tell Kelsey to think of punishments. Kelsey could probably think about 100 punishments. All right, Kyle, take it easy. Chugagan takes the dub. Whoa! Kyle with the flames as he heads out. The hot takes as he heads out. Kyle, I disagree, man. I disagree. I love it. Oh, there it is. There it is. You're trolling. Okay. You're trolling. All right, so I will holler at you guys Saturday. Take it easy, Devil. See ya. Daniel. Kyle, obviously. Josh was in chat. Thank you to everybody that popped in today, and we'll see you Saturday. It's the W.A.D.E concept. We're debating, doing everything. You know what it is. Till next time. Peace. Don't troll me, Kyle.